Hamlet by William Shakespeare. Act 1. Prince Hamlet of Denmark is the son of the recently deceased King Hamlet and nephew of King Claudius, his father's brother and successor. Claudius hastily married King Hamlet's widow, Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, and took the throne for himself. Denmark has a long-standing feud with neighbouring Norway, in which King Hamlet slew King Fortinbras of Norway in a battle some years ago. Although Denmark defeated Norway and the Norwegian throne fell to King Fortinbras's infirm brother, Denmark fears that an invasion led by the dead Norwegian king's son, Prince Fortinbras, is imminent. On a cold night on the ramparts of Elsinore, the Danish royal castle, the sentries Bernardo and Marcellus discuss a ghost resembling the late King Hamlet which they have recently seen, and bring Prince Hamlet's friend Horatio as a witness. After the ghost appears again, the three vow to tell Prince Hamlet what they have witnessed. If it assume my noble father's person, I'll speak to it through hell itself should gape, and bid me hold my peace. I pray you all, if you have hitherto concealed this sight, let it be tenable in your silence still. And whatsoever else shall hap tonight, give it an understanding but no tongue. I will requite your love, so fare you well. Upon the platform 'twixt 11 and 12, I'll visit you. The court gathers the next day, and King Claudius and Queen Gertrude discuss affairs of state with their elderly advisor, Polonius. Claudius grants permission for Polonius's son, Laertes, to return to school in France, and he sends envoys to inform the King of Norway about Fortinbras. Claudius also questions Hamlet regarding his continuing to grieve for his father and forbids him to return to his university in Wittenberg. After the court exits, Hamlet despairs of his father's death and his mother's hasty remarriage. Learning from the ghost from Horatio, Hamlet resolves to see it himself. As Polonius' son Laertes prepares to depart for France, Polonius offers him advice that culminates in the maxim, "To thine own self be true." Polonius' daughter Ophelia admits her interest in Hamlet, but Laertes warns her against seeking the prince's attention, and Polonius orders her to reject his advances. That night on the rampart, the ghost appears to Hamlet, tells the prince that he was poisoned by Claudius, and demands that Hamlet avenge the murder. Hamlet agrees, and the ghost vanishes. The prince confides to Horatio and the sentries that from now on he plans to put an antic disposition on, or act as though he has gone mad. Hamlet forces them to swear to keep his plans for revenge secret. However, he remains uncertain of the ghost's reliability. Act 2. Ophelia rushes to her father, telling him that Hamlet arrived at her door the prior night, half undressed and behaving erratically. Polonius blames love for Hamlet's madness and resolves to inform Claudius and Gertrude. As he enters to do so, the king and queen are welcoming Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, two student acquaintances of Hamlet, to Elsinore. The royal couple has requested that the two students investigate the cause of Hamlet's mood and behaviour. Additional news requires that Polonius wait to be heard. Messengers from Norway inform Claudius that the King of Norway has rebuked Prince Fortinbras for attempting to refight his father's battles. The forces that Fortinbras had conscripted to march against Denmark will instead be sent against Poland, though they will pass through Danish territory to get there. Polonius tells Claudius and Gertrude his theory regarding Hamlet's behaviour, and then speaks to Hamlet in a hall of the castle to try to learn more. Hamlet feigns madness and subtly insults Polonius all the while. When Rosencrantz and Guildenstern arrive, Hamlet greets his friends warmly, but quickly discerns that they are there to spy on him for Claudius. Hamlet admits that he is upset at his situation, but refuses to give the true reason, instead remarking, "What a piece of work is a man." Rosencrantz and Guildenstern tell Hamlet that they have brought along a troupe of actors that they met while travelling to Elsinore. Hamlet, after welcoming the actors and dismissing his friends turned spies, asks them to deliver a soliloquy about the death of King Priam and Queen Hecuba at the climax of the Trojan War. Hamlet then asks the actors to stage The Murder of Gonzago, a play featuring a death in the style of his father's murder. Hamlet intends to study Claudius's reaction to the play and thereby determine the truth of the ghost's story of Claudius's guilt. Act 3. Polonius forces Ophelia to return Hamlet's love letters to the prince, while he and Claudius secretly watch in order to evaluate Hamlet's reaction. Hamlet is walking alone in the hall as the king and Polonius await Ophelia's entrance. Hamlet muses on thoughts of life versus death. Act 3. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation, devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of disprized love, the law's delay, the insolence of office and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin, who would fardels bear, to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have, than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied over with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pitch and moment with this regard their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action. Soft you now, the fair Ophelia, nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. When Ophelia enters and tries to return Hamlet's things, Hamlet accuses her of immodesty and cries, "Get thee to a nunnery! Get thee to a nunnery! Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent, honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offences at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do crawling between earth and heaven? We are arrant knaves, all. Believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Though it is unclear whether this, too, is a show of madness or genuine distress. His reaction convinces Claudius that Hamlet is not mad for love. Shortly thereafter, the court assembles to watch the play Hamlet has commissioned. Nay, do not think I flatter, for what advancement may I hope from thee? That no revenue hast but thy good spirits to feed and clothe thee, why should the poor be flattered? No, let the candied tongue lick absurd pomp, and crook the pregnant hinges of the knee, where thrift may follow fawning. Dost thou hear? Since my dear soul was mistress of her choice, and could of men distinguish her election, she hath sealed thee for herself, for thou hast been as one in suffering, all that suffers nothing. A man that fortune's buffets and rewards has taken with equal thanks, and blessed are those whose blood and judgment are so well commedled, that they are not a pipe for fortune finger, to sound what stop she please. Give me that man that is not passion's slave, and I will wear him in my heart's core, aye, in my heart of heart, as I do thee. Something too much of this. There is a play tonight before the king. One scene of it comes near the circumstance which I have told thee of my father's death. I prithee, when thou seest that act afoot, even with the very comment of thy soul, observe my uncle. If his occulted guilt do not itself unkennel in one's speech, it is a damned ghost that we have seen, and my imaginations are as foul as Vulcan's stithy. Give him heedful note, for I mine eyes will rivet to his face, and after we will both our judgments join in censure of the seeming. After seeing the player king murdered by his rival, pouring poison in his ear, Claudius abruptly rises and runs from the room. For Hamlet, this is proof of his uncle's guilt. Gertrude summons Hamlet to her chamber to demand an explanation. Meanwhile, Claudius talks to himself about the impossibility of repenting, since he still has possession of his ill-gotten goods, his brother's crown and wife. He sinks to his knees. Hamlet, on his way to visit his mother, sneaks up behind him. Now might I do it, Pat, now as is a praying, and now I'll do it, and so I goes to heaven. And so I am revenged, that would be scanned. A villain kills my father, and for that I, his sole son, do this same villain send to heaven. Why, this is bait and salary, not revenge. I took my father grossly, full of bread, with all his crimes broad blown, as flush as May, and how his audit stands, who knows save heaven? But in our circumstance and of course of thought, 'tis heavy with him, and am I then revenged, to take him in the purging of his soul, when he is fit and seasoned for his passage? No. Up, sword, and now thou a more horrid hint, when he is drunk asleep, or in his rage, or in the incestuous pleasure of his bed, at game, a swearing, or about some act that has no relish of salvation in it. Then trip him, that his heels may kick at heaven, and that his soul may be as damned and black as hell whereto it goes. My mother stays, this psychic but prolongs thy sickly days. Hamlet does not kill him, reasoning that killing Claudius while he is praying will send him straight to heaven while his father's ghost is stuck in purgatory. In the Queen's bedchamber, Hamlet and Gertrude fight bitterly, Polonius, spying on the conversation from behind a tapestry, calls for help as Gertrude, believing Hamlet wants to kill her, calls out for help herself. Hamlet, believing it is Claudius, stabs wildly, killing Polonius, but he pulls aside the curtain and sees his mistake. In a rage, Hamlet brutally insults his mother for her apparent ignorance of Claudius's villainy. But the ghost enters and reprimands Hamlet for his inaction and harsh words. Unable to see or hear the ghost herself, Gertrude takes Hamlet's conversation with it as further evidence of madness. After begging the Queen to stop sleeping with Claudius, Hamlet leaves, dragging Polonius's corpse away. Act 4. Hamlet jokes with Claudius about where he has hidden Polonius's body, and the king, fearing for his life, sends Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to accompany Hamlet to England with a sealed letter to the English king requesting that Hamlet be executed immediately. Unhinged by grief at Polonius's death, Ophelia wanders Elsinore. Laertes arrives back from France, enraged by his father's death and his sister's madness. Claudius convinces Laertes that Hamlet is solely responsible, but a letter soon arrives indicating that Hamlet has returned to Denmark, foiling Claudius's plan. Claudius switches tactics, proposing a fencing match between Laertes and Hamlet to settle their differences. Laertes will be given a poison-tipped foil, and if that fails, Claudius will offer Hamlet poisoned wine as a congratulation. Gertrude interrupts to report that Ophelia has drowned, though it is unclear whether it was suicide or an accident caused by her madness. Act 5. Horatio has received a letter from Hamlet explaining that the prince escaped by negotiating with pirates who attempted to attack his England-bound ship, and the friends reunite off-stage. Two grave diggers discuss Ophelia's apparent suicide while digging her grave. Hamlet arrives with Horatio and banters with one of the grave diggers, who unearths the skull of a jester from Hamlet's childhood, Yorick.
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times, and now how abhorred in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it. Here hung those lips that I have kissed I know not how oft. Where be your jibes now, your gambols, your songs, your flashes of merriment, that were wont to set the table on a roar? Not one now to mock your own grinning, quite chop-fallen. Now get you to my lady's chamber and tell her, let her paint an inch thick, to this favour she must come. Make her laugh at that.
Ophelia's funeral procession approaches, led by Laertes. Hamlet and Horatio initially hide, but when Hamlet realizes that Ophelia is the one being buried, he reveals himself, proclaiming his love for her. Laertes and Hamlet fight by Ophelia's graveside, but the brawl is broken up. Back at Elsinore, Hamlet explains to Horatio that he had discovered Claudius's letter among Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's belongings and replaced it with a forged copy, indicating that his former friend should be killed instead. A foppish courtier, Osric, interrupts the conversation to deliver the fencing challenge to Hamlet. Hamlet, despite Horatio's pleas, accepts it. Hamlet does well at first, leading the match by 2 hits to none, and Gertrude raises a toast to him using the poisoned glass of wine Claudius had set aside for Hamlet. Claudius tries to stop her, but it is too late. She drinks, and Laertes realizes the plot will be revealed. Laertes slashes Hamlet with his poison blade. In the ensuing scuffle, they switch weapons, and Hamlet wounds Laertes with his own poisoned sword. Gertrude collapses, and claiming she has been poisoned, dies. In his dying moments, Laertes reconciles with Hamlet and reveals Claudius's plan. Hamlet rushes at Claudius and kills him. As the poison takes effect, Hamlet, hearing that Fortinbras is marching through the area, names the Norwegian prince as his successor. Horatio, distraught at the thought of being the last survivor and living whilst Hamlet does not, says he will commit suicide by drinking the dregs of Gertrude's poisoned wine. But Hamlet begs him to live on and tell his story.
Oh, villainy, how? Let the door be locked. Treachery! Seek it out! The point, envenomed too? Then venom to thy work. Here, thou incestuous, murderous, damned Dane, drink off this potion. Is thy union here? Follow my mother. Heaven, make thee free of it. I follow thee. I am dead, Horatio, wretched queen. Adieu, you that look pale and tremble at this chance, that are but mutes or audience to this act. Had I but time as this fell sergeant, death is strict in his arrest. I could tell you, but let it be, Horatio. I am dead. Though livest, report me and my cause all right to the unsatisfied. Give me the cup. Let go, by heaven, I'll have it. O God, Horatio, what a wounded name. Things standing thus unknown shall live behind me. If thou didst ever hold me in thy heart, absent thee from felicity a while, and in this harsh world, draw thy breath in pain to tell my story. The potent poison quite overthrows my spirit. I cannot live to hear the news from England, but I do prophesy the election lights. On Fortinbras he has my dying voice, so tell him with the occurrence more or less which have solicited. The rest is silent. The end.